Did Dave Callister know his wife? Hell, no. Of course, he didn't. That was one of the reasons why he couldn't come to terms with the fact that she had left him. She had taken a lover and was behaving like a love-struck teenage girl. Dave and Allison had been married for 20 years. They met at their then workplace, dated for a couple of years, and then got married in a beautiful ceremony at a large church in the city center. Their parents got along well and agreed to split the wedding expenses between the two families. Then followed 20 years of marital bliss. There were a few bumps along the way, but nothing serious. And they had always been able to overcome the problems. Dave was the director of a large and successful architectural firm, while Allison worked as a senior accountant at a major multidisciplinary accounting firm. They had an 18-year-old daughter, Katie, who had just graduated from high school with good grades. Earlier in the week, Ollie had talked to Dave about how her sister Kendra was planning to decorate her house. "Maybe I'll help her this weekend," Dave said with a grin. Ever since she divorced Philip, she had no one to help her, so he thought, why not? "Oh God, no, Dave." Ollie laughed. "Not at all. You already work enough, darling. I'll probably stay with Kendra and help her myself. I have some extra free time now, considering the overtime we've been doing for tax returns. I'll be back on Saturday morning, and we can have some fun over the weekend." "Great idea," Dave exclaimed enthusiastically. "What about Katie?" "No problem. We'll just give her some money and tell her to go have a good time with her friends." They both laughed. After Allison left on Tuesday morning, Dave found her cell phone in the charger in their bedroom. He shook his head and smiled to himself. "God, Ollie. You can be so scatterbrained sometimes. You'd lose your head if it wasn't attached, I swear." Allison called him from Kendra's phone to let him know she had arrived safely. "Hi, honey," she chimed. "Just calling to say I made it safely. Kendra sends her love." He could hear Kendra in the background. "Hi, Ollie." "Hi, Kendra. By the way, sweetheart, you left your phone here on the dresser." Allison laughed. But did her laugh sound a bit tense? Damn. "Well, that's good news, no need to worry. We're just about to start on Kendra's kitchen. We need to prep the walls. I'll try to call you every evening around the same time. But if I don't, please don't worry. We'll probably just be covered in paint or wallpaper paste." They ended the conversation with, "I love you," and the first day came to a close. Dave often worked from home, and after finishing up, he would chat with his daughter over breakfast, enjoying toast with honey, discussing what awaited her after school. "Dad," Katie said hesitantly, "what's wrong, sweetheart?" "Oh, it's nothing serious. You know my boyfriend, Newton." Dave nodded. "Well, his uncle is an entrepreneur. One of his business ventures is a large, trendy nightclub in Bakerville called the Blue Mood Room. Stanley, Newt's uncle, promised Newt free access to the VIP area of the nightclub for a special party for our study group tonight, but only if we get really good grades." "Are you even old enough to drink?" Dave asked skeptically. "Oh, that's not a problem, Dad. Stanley is a real sweetheart. He made it very clear that the VIP area for our party will be completely alcohol-free. He's arranged for food, snacks, soda, non-alcoholic beer, and wine. There will even be some non-alcoholic champagne for us. And we'll have our own security and staff for the VIP area, so everything will be 100% safe." "Oh, come on, Daddy. Please say yes." Dave nodded. "I know Stan through the Chamber of Commerce. I have to say, dealing with him is a refreshing experience because he's a man of his word. So, yes, of course, go ahead." Katie squealed with excitement. "Thank you, Dad," she shouted. "I'll probably be back late and there will be food at the club, so don't worry about dinner for me. We're getting a limo ride to the club." Dave smiled, but something tugged at his heart. His little girl was growing up. He thought about calling Allison to tell her about Katie's plans but changed his mind. After all, it seemed that helping her sister decorate the house was more important to her than the week Katie graduated from high school. Well, that was Allison's choice. Katie left around 4 in the afternoon. The group of friends was meeting at Newton Chance's house, and from there, they would head to the club in the limo Stanley had hired. Before 10 p.m., Katie returned. Her makeup was ruined by tears, and Newton's face showed a mixture of sadness and sympathy. "My God, Newt!" Dave exclaimed. "What the hell happened to her? Did someone hit her?" Before Newt could answer, Katie looked at her father and broke down in sobs. Through her tears, she managed to choke out, "It wasn't me who got hit. Though, honestly, I am hurting. It's you. It's going to hurt you. I just found out tonight that Mom left you. She's seeing another man. You must be mistaken, Katie. Allison would never cheat on me. She loves me." Katie shook her head. "I'm sorry, Dad, but it's true. The VIP area is a strange setup. It's like a control module in the center of the club. It's completely surrounded by mirrored glass. The people inside can see what's happening outside, but the people outside can't see into the VIP area. And there are video screens that show the dancers on 4 different dance floors around the VIP area. And I saw people sitting at 2 big tables that I recognized. They were people I'd met at picnics and parties hosted by Mom's firm. Then I saw Mom and that young guy who works as her assistant, Dean Salazar. They were dancing, Dad. But it wasn't just friendly dancing. Anyone dancing like that in school would have been kicked out, for crying out loud. They practically had sex." "It's true, sir." Newton nodded. "I'm really sorry, but there's no room for doubt or mistakes. We know what we saw. And I took the liberty of asking my Uncle Stan to make copies of the surveillance footage so you'll have it as evidence if you need it. I also took some photos and videos on my phone." "Oh God," Dave said. "What the hell happened?" "Dad," Katie said as tears streamed down her cheeks, "it gets even worse. They left the dance floor, and we followed them. When we caught up, he was having sex with Mom on the hood of his car. He was doing it to her in the street like a cheap street girl. Newt recorded it on his phone." Dave looked sick. "Oh, sweetheart, I believe you. I'm just so sorry you had to witness that." He quickly dialed Kendra's number. It went straight to voicemail. "Kendra, it's Dave. I know the story about you and Allison decorating your house was complete nonsense. I know where she was, I know who she was with, and I know what she was doing with him. I have video evidence. Tell her to get her ass back here immediately." Newton was comforting Katie. "Listen, Katie, I think it's really important that you and your dad spend some time together to work through all of this. But if you need me, just call. Even if it's the middle of the night. I'll keep my phone on the pillow." Before leaving, he forwarded the evidence to Dave. Dave watched the video. He was shocked by the quality. In every bloody detail, he saw his wife having sex on the hood of a sports car with her young lover. There was no doubt who the red car belonged to, as the license plate read, Dean. An hour later, Kendra and a furious Allison arrived. Kendra seemed a bit hesitant, as if she didn't really want to be there. Allison decided that the best defense was offense and immediately started yelling at Dave. "How dare you spy on me? What the hell were you thinking? Do you have some dirty little private creep tracking my every move? Have you lost your mind, you little pervert? Were you happy when you saw me having fun with Dean? I bet you did. You were probably thrilled watching my lover give me hotter sex than you ever did in our entire marriage. Oh, and in case you were wondering, he's as strong as a horse and can get pleasure 3 times in an hour. That's more than you ever managed, even when you were Dean's age." Dave stared at Allison, stunned by her outburst. He looked at her and shook his head. What the hell has gotten into you? Dean, she interrupted mercilessly. He's crazy about me. Dave yelled, Allison. For God's sake. Katie is here. What the hell are you doing? Kendra looked shocked. She glanced around the large room and saw that Katie was sitting curled up in a deep chair, partially hidden from view. She wanted to go to her and offer comfort, but her sister's outburst of rage had paralyzed her. Well, Katie, now you know that your dear daddy has been tailing me like a slimy piece of trash. Before Dave could stop her, Katie leapt from the chair, her face pale with fury. She grabbed her mother's face and screamed, You stupid, filthy woman. Dad didn't send a detective after you. He had no idea that you were a cheating tramp. And who told Dad? Who gave him the evidence of your betrayal? It was me. I was, as you called me, the slimy piece of trash, wasn't I? Allison screamed back, You're full of crap, Katie. There's no way you were there. I was there at the private party in the VIP area. I saw you on the dance floor, practically having sex with Dean, your assistant. Then, when you two lovebirds left the dance floor, my friends and I followed you. We tracked you to the parking lot and saw you on the hood of his car. Mom, my friends were with me. Can you imagine how humiliating it was to find out in front of all my friends that my mother is a cheater? There was a loud crack as Allison slapped Katie across the face. The blow was so hard that she fell to the floor, dazed enough. Dave shouted so loudly that the room's decorations trembled. You will never, ever hit my daughter again. Do you understand? But she had no right to call me a cheater. Dave rushed to Katie and helped her up. He gently touched her cheek, where a bruise was already starting to form. Are you okay, Katie? Katie took his hand and said calmly and firmly, I'll be okay once that woman is out of this house. But sweetheart, Allison whined, I didn't mean to hit you. Bullshit. Katie scoffed. You wanted to hit me just as much as you wanted Dean. The argument continued until Dave finally grabbed his head and said, Enough. Enough of your crap, Allison. You're giving me a headache. Kendra, please take Allison home. I'm sure you two still have plenty to do to finish decorating the apartment. Kendra's face flushed, but she didn't respond to the snide remark. She led Allison to the door. Without saying a word, they left, closing the door behind them. The whole situation seemed strange to Dave. In all 20 years of marriage, nothing like this had ever happened. He realized Katie was speaking to him. Sorry, sweetheart, what did you say? I asked, how's your head? Not great, baby. Honestly, I think I'll take a couple of aspirin and go to bed. I can't deal with this crap right now. I'm so sorry you got dragged into it. They said goodnight to each other and went to their rooms. Katie lay on her bed, tossing and turning. She couldn't understand how her mother, who had always seemed decent, faithful, and loving, could suddenly turn into a cruel, cheating witch. And with someone only a few years older than Katie. She shuddered at the thought. If her dad divorced her, that would technically make Dean her stepfather. It was horrifying. She heard a strange noise coming from her father's room. What's happening? She jumped out of bed and rushed to him, turned on the light, and saw her father writhing. The left side of his face seemed somehow distorted. He was struggling to speak, and a strange gurgling sound was the only thing that came from his crooked mouth. She realized her father was having a stroke. She ran to the phone on the bedside table, dialed the emergency number, and was connected almost immediately. It's my dad. Please, come quickly. He's having a stroke. She answered a few simple questions and gave the operator the address. The operator said, the paramedics are on their way. Please make sure your door is unlocked so they can quickly access the patient. The paramedics arrived at the house within 8 minutes, and after quickly assessing Dave, they asked Katie a few questions. Had he ever had a stroke before? Was there a family history? I don't think there's any history in our family. But tonight, he had a big shock. We found out that my mom is cheating on us, and it gave him a terrible headache. What did he take for the headache? He took aspirin. Thank God. That will help. It's going to be a huge factor in giving him the best chance to pull through. Shortly before 3 a.m., a very distraught Katie sat in the hospital. She had called Newt, who, God bless him, soon walked into the waiting room. Thank God you're here, Newt. Katie sobbed. She had been holding it together, but as soon as Newt hugged her, she lost control and started crying uncontrollably. They don't know yet. They've got him restrained. They're not sure if he'll survive the stroke. It's a pretty severe case. Newt nodded and squeezed her hand. I guess I'd better call Aunt Kendra and ask for permission to speak with Mom. She called Kendra, whose response was a bit vague. Katie. What the hell are you calling for at this hour? Aunt Kendra, it's my dad. He's sick. I need to talk to Mom right now. For some reason, Katie decided to put the call on speaker. Hello. Allison shouted. Why the hell are you calling in the middle of the night? I thought you'd want to know that Dad is in the hospital, in the ICU. He's really sick. He had a massive stroke, and he might even die. Good. Allison shouted. Then let that bastard die, and I'll live my damn life. The call abruptly ended. Katie sat in shock, too stunned to speak. She turned to Newt and finally found her voice. I can't believe she actually said that. That she wants my dad, her husband, to die. If only I had recorded that call. Newt held up his phone and said, I did, sweetheart. It's all recorded. He shook his head. I can't believe she could say something like that. God, Katie, I know this isn't the best time to bring this up, but a couple of months ago your mother was flirting with me. Your dad was at work, you were upstairs studying, and she came on to me. When I turned her down, she acted like it was a joke, and I went along with it, but now? Well, now I'm not so sure it was a joke. Katie shook her head. Oh God, Newt. What am I supposed to do now? I was planning to go to university, but my dad is sick, and my mom turned out to be a cheater. What can I do? I have to stay home and take care of him, don't I? Yes, Katie, of course. I know going to a prestigious university would be great, but we can always attend the local college and get our degrees there, right? After all, it's not a bad place academically. What do you mean by, we can go to the local college? Katie, I love you, and I can't stand the thought of you struggling alone at home, trying to take care of your father, manage the household, and pursue your education all at once. I want to be here to help you. For the rest of our lives. He stood up, opened a ring box, got down on one knee under the bright lights of the waiting room, and said, Katie, I'm asking you to marry me. She burst into tears and said, yes. The nurse at the reception desk clapped her hands and cheered. She stood up from her desk and walked over to them. Sweetheart, you've got a good man. And you, young man, you've got a wonderful woman. You're both young, some might say too young, but not me. I think you two have everything it takes for a lifelong marriage. I heard what your mother said to you. Your dad is in good hands, and he's going to recover. Tell him to leave his cheating wife. Life's too short for a man to carry around a dirty adulteress on his back. Sorry for calling your mother an adulteress, but if it quacks and waddles. She returned to her desk, and Katie and Newt hugged. Soon, they both drifted off to sleep. At 7 a.m., they were woken by a tired-looking doctor. Hi, good morning to both of you. I'm Dr. Spengler, the lead surgeon on the team that worked on your father, Katie. The good news is, we expect him to make a full recovery. Your father had a hemorrhagic stroke. He may have some trouble walking for a while, but we'll help him through his rehabilitation. We were able to stop the bleeding and fix the problem. We'll keep him in the hospital for a couple of days, and then we'll transfer him to a rehabilitation center. Katie asked the doctor if the news about his wife's infidelity could have caused the stroke. The surgeon thought for a few seconds and then nodded. Generally, it's a myth that stress can directly cause a stroke. However, if the stress leads to a dangerously high spike in blood pressure, it can trigger a hemorrhagic stroke, which is when a blood vessel bursts, as happened with your father. They thanked the doctor, and as he returned to the ICU, they were surprised to see Kendra approaching them. She rushed to Katie and, to her horror, pulled her into a tight hug. "Oh, Katie. I'm so sorry. So very sorry. When Allison said she wished Dave would die, I couldn't believe that my sister, my own flesh and blood, could say something so cruel." "Is she with you, Kendra?" Kendra shook her head. "No. After I snatched the phone from her, we had a huge fight, and I threw her out. Dave is a good man and a great husband. If my Phil had been even half as good as your father, we'd still be married. Your mother told me a bunch of nonsense about your dad. She convinced me that he had affairs and that her lover was just revenge. But now I realize she was just using me to cover up her own cheating." Kendra paused to catch her breath, then asked, "How is he doing?" "The doctor just spoke with us. Dad's going to be okay, but it'll take some time for him to get back on his feet." Kendra nodded and said, "Thank God he's going to be all right." Dave spent a month in the rehabilitation center, where he received a combination of medication and physical therapy to maintain muscle tone and work on his weakened right leg. Dave's once jet black hair was now as white as snow. When it was time for Dave to come home, Katie and Newt picked him up in their pickup truck. His luggage and the walker he still used for walking were placed in the back seat. None of them had heard anything from Allison. Neither had Kendra. "That idiot might think you're dead," she said to Dave, shaking her head. After a couple of weeks, Dave's leg started to improve, and once he was able to get rid of the walker, he began using a beautiful handmade cane for support. One evening, over a cup of coffee, he had a chat with Katie. "I think my limp and the cane will always remind me of what Allison did to me, or rather, to us. And my white hair too. Do you think I should dye it?" Katie shook her head. "No, Dad. I don't think you should dye your hair. Maybe grow a little beard. I think you look cool, and a beard would just add contrast. What should I do about your mother? Divorce that worthless woman and move on. Short and to the point. By the way, how are you and Newt doing with your classes?" "Better than expected. One of my professors once studied at MIT but came back to his hometown to take care of his elderly parents. He teaches at our college to pass the time and make a little money. His parents passed away long ago, but he decided he liked the slower pace of life, so he stayed on to teach here. He's really good. When we start our degree courses next semester, it's going to be great." They chatted a little more until Katie asked, "Dad, do you think you'll be able to date again?" He looked at her and shrugged. "I'm not quite ready yet. But yeah, now that I'm feeling much better, I might start thinking about it. It's clear that your mom and I will never be together again, so why not date? Do you have anyone in mind?" She smiled at him. "It's more likely that worthy women will be competing. I might have to hold a lottery." They laughed, but in reality, Katie was thinking about one particular woman she knew was fond of Dave. Molly Ransom was a lovely woman, about the same age as Dave. She had been divorced for many years after discovering that her husband was a serial cheater. She didn't have any children and worked as a librarian at the city library. Katie thought she was a bit quirky. Molly never went on dates, but she got along well with her dad at parties. Katie invited Molly over to the house, under the pretense that her father needed company, so they could have a chance to chat. Katie wanted to help her father through an awkward situation. Clearly, he hadn't dated in decades, and his self-esteem, ego, and sense of identity had been crushed by the pain of his wife's infidelity. So, he needed a little help. Katie noticed that Molly, as usual, was dressed in a semi-sheer dress that didn't hide her rather thick thighs and round bottom. She brought them both a cup of coffee and a plate of cookies, chatted for a bit, and then excused herself to leave them alone when she noticed that her father couldn't take his eyes off Molly's hips. In fact, as far as she could tell, her father was trying to conceal a growing interest. Katie smiled at them, and as she left the living room, she started giggling to herself. "Dad, get a room," she thought with a smile. Molly was sweet, and she hoped things would work out between them. A couple of days later, like a bolt from the blue, Katie received two surprises, one pleasant and the other not. Her father announced that he was going on a date with Molly next Wednesday. And then Katie received a note from her mother, demanding, not asking, for a meeting between her, Katie, and Dean. "God, Mom," she said to herself. "You want me to meet you and your lover? After you said you wished my father dead? Lady, you've got some damn nerve." At first, she wondered whether she should go, but after talking to Newt, she decided she would. She also decided to keep the meeting a secret from her father, as she didn't want to ruin his day with Molly by reminding him of his cheating wife. The meeting took place in the spacious food court of the larger of the two malls in their small town. When Katie arrived, she saw her mother and her lover sitting at a table. She walked over, sat down across from them, and coldly asked, "Is everything all right?" Allison attempted an uneasy smile. "Yes, it is. It's good to see you, Katie. I've missed you." "Really?" Katie said. "That's unfortunate. You knew where I was, at home, taking care of Dad, helping him recover from the stroke that nearly killed him." How is he doing?" "Better than you'd hoped," Katie snapped, barely holding back her fury. "What do you mean?" Allison's voice held a note of concern. "Oh, don't you remember? When I called you from the hospital, you were at Kendra's. You told me, 'Let that bastard die, and I'll live the rest of my damn life.' You wanted my dad to die. I will never forget that, and I will never forgive you." Allison's face flushed, and Katie noticed the shock on Dean's face. She didn't say anything, but she made a note of it. "I guess I can't take back what I said. I was so angry that I probably didn't even think about what I was saying." Allison took a sip of coffee before speaking again. "I'm filing for divorce. Dean and I are now working at the corporate headquarters in Boston. We're just about to buy a lovely little house there." That's when Dean spoke for the first time. "And when your mother gets custody of you, and I get custody of my son Kevin, we'll all live together as one happy family." Katie burst out laughing. "What kind of crap is that? Really? What the hell? How on earth is my mother going to get custody of me?" She looked at the confused expression on Dean's face and felt something. Was it pity for him? Quite possibly. Suddenly, it all made perfect, crappy sense. She realized her jaw had dropped in shock. "Oh God. This is amazing. My mother can't get custody of me. That ship sailed a long time ago. She lied to you about her age, didn't she? She told you I was, 14 or so?" She noticed the look of horror on his face. "The reality, Dean, is that I'm 18, I've graduated from high school, and I'm engaged to be married to my fiancé, Newton." She turned her gaze to her mother. "You remember Newton, don't you, Mom? My boyfriend, the one you tried to seduce behind my back." "Oh, sweetheart," Allison said. "That was a mistake. A joke." "Yeah, sure, Mom. Of course, it was. Only, no one was laughing." She turned to Dean. "I bet she chased after you, didn't she? She asked you to have sex with her on the hood of your car, right? And she shaved 10 years off her age and really went all out to get you. Do you two honestly think a court would allow a pair of cheaters like you to have custody of your kid? You're a pair of idiots." Dean shook his head. He seemed to be in shock. "I didn't tell Dad about our meeting because I didn't want to ruin his date with Molly Ransom." Allison laughed loudly. He's dating that fat ass. Katie smiled at her. Yes, Mom, but I think Dad might help her lose some weight. I think he's got something special planned for her behind. But what do I know? I'm only 14, right? Katie laughed, stood up, and walked away, shaking her head. Absolute idiots. When she got home, Katie asked her father how his daytime date had gone. He admitted that it went well, and they had another dinner date planned for Friday evening. Katie told her father about the meeting with the two lovers, and he laughed so hard his side hurt. Really? You said that to the cheater? Good. Maybe I will help Molly with her backside. Dave and Molly hit it off. No matter how often they were together, with her shapely, full thighs resting on his shoulders, she didn't lose any weight in her legs or backside. But that didn't matter, because they were just the way Dave liked them. The divorce was a disaster for Dean and Allison, as well as for their employer. North Carolina, where this unfortunate story takes place, is one of the very few states in the U.S. where alienation of affection laws not only still exist but are actively enforced. Local officials not only encouraged but actively facilitated the case, resulting in the company paying out a couple of $1 million in compensation, not just to Dave, but also to Dean's young and very pretty wife, Bethany. Newt and Katie got married, but they chose not to invite Allison to the wedding. Dave and Molly also got married, and Bethany is dating men but hasn't found a steady partner yet. However, she's in counseling and getting better every day. Allison and Dean are still working at the same company in the Boston headquarters, but their careers have essentially been ruined. Which is a damn shame. But sometimes, life happens. To everyone.